Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Denise Ejo, the CEO of Cornwall Cancer Foundation. I would like to welcome you to our Cornwall Cancer Foundation page. Our goal is to create an awareness of the challenges, support and guidance experienced in managing cancer care for sufferers, family, carers and friends. To engage with us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, click our notification bell.
Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are around the world. Good afternoon and welcome to Cornwall Cancer Foundation, our live discussion on mental health and cancer. So today we have in the house Dr. Tim Ojo, who is a consultant psychiatrist. Now, I'm very slow. I always tell you, 9 surgeries in the brain, it's best for us to respect ourselves, yeah? Consultant in what do you call it? Psychiatrist consultant, yeah, and also fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. Sorry, you guys, you need to help me wake up because Kim has knocked me this week. I don't know how it really knocked me for real. I can't believe it. But anyway, we want to welcome you to the house, Dr. Ojo. Normally, we have this once a month where we discuss cancer and the effects it has on us as humans, and we share our, the posts around so people can benefit from the information shared by our specialists who talk about it. We are not all specialists. So my name is Dr. Denise Ejo. I'm not a doctor of medicine. I am a doctor of academics. So we're in 2 different categories. A lot of people assume I know about the medicine. I don't. I am not a medical doctor. So, Dr. Ojo, welcome into the house. We are going to give you the floor now, and as we go along, I will switch off and on. What do you call it? Volume. Yeah, and then if there's any need or any discussions or questions come up, I will put them out to you, straight to you.
Thank you very much, Denise, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Denise, you need to enable me to share screen.
We now, yes. So can you see if you can get it now?
Okay.
You have started sharing?
Not yet. I am sharing now. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I respect myself now? I'll mute myself.
No problem. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Tim Ojo. I'm privileged to share an hour of your time on Saturday to talk about something very important. It's not going to be a kind of didactic medical lecture. It's really about getting people to understand the impact of cancer on mental health. There's no doubt in my mind that many people on the call will be sufferers, and I use that word advisedly. And many of us who have not been sufferers would have relatives, friends, colleagues who either are survivors of cancer, battling cancer at the moment, or indeed have lost the battle to cancer. That's a word that people find difficult sometimes, but I use that because I want us to understand that taking care of our mental health is part of what we can do to make the journey of cancer a bit less intolerable. So I've got a number of slides, at the end of which we'll have hopefully a question and answer session. I'll be able to share with you my thoughts. I'm not an oncologist. As you know, a psychiatrist is trained in medicine and specializes in mental health. So that's where I'm coming at this from. I've got an outline for my talk. I'll be setting some context, defining what cancer actually is, because sometimes we forget that the basics are just to understand the difference between a malignant tumor and a benign tumor. As I said, I'm not an oncologist, but just to give some context. And also, I think it's important for us to understand what I mean by mental health, because you'll be surprised to realize that people can have mental illnesses and still have relatively good mental health, while people who may not have diagnosed mental illness may have poor mental health. So there's a definition of what we mean by mental health. Then I put a kind of provocation, then what? What do we need to do when we know a bit more about the link between cancer and mental health? And then some reflections from people who have been through the journey of cancer diagnosis and treatment. And then hopefully we have a Q&A. So let's set the context. Without a doubt, a cancer diagnosis is challenging, frightening, and life-changing. wherever in the world you encounter it. And throughout the cancer journey, which I'll define later on, you have a different range of mental health needs. However, the sad thing is there's relatively little research on the mental health of cancer sufferers and how best to support their mental health and well-being. And most of the research has been done in countries where you have advanced healthcare systems that can manage some aspects of cancer. In various parts of the world, the first port of contact for a cancer sufferer is not the medical facility. It could be a church or an imam or some kind of spiritual healer. So we have to understand that wherever you come into help seeking, it's based on being exceptionally frightened and worried about what the consequences of cancer is going to be in your life. This is just a photo to show you the kind of potential image you have. Somebody closing their eyes, obviously distressed, scared, and not really knowing where to go first. And you'd be surprised that some people, even in the throes of having a diagnosis, will not know who to share their news with, may cover it up. And so when you're thinking about mental health related cancer, it's not just about when you start having things like anxiety or depression, it's really about the emotional turmoil people go through when they come to terms with the fact that something is growing in their body that they don't want to grow and has negative consequences for life expectancy. So what do we know about cancer? Cancer is a disease in which some parts of the body cells grow uncontrollably and then spread to other parts. So pressure symptoms, depending on what kind of tissues, they cause all kinds of difficulties. Cancer can start almost anywhere in the human body. Although we recognize that cell division is a normal process of growth and multiplication that replaces cells that require replacement, after a while, there's certain cell types that don't need to grow anymore. And cancer is when certain cells disobey instructions from the brain and central nervous system and start growing abnormally. And when this becomes damaging or injurious to the body, and when it multiplies at a rate that the body can't cope with, you have tumors mostly, and in some blood cancers, you don't have actually solid forms. But in the main, cancer will result in an abnormal clump of cells that keep growing and causing difficulties. As I said, the abnormally fast-growing cells form tumors. These tumors are clumps of cells. These tumors can be malignant in terms of either the way they spread, the speed and the extent to which they can spread across the body, or benign, where they're confined to a particular part of the body. Malignant tumors will travel through either the bloodstream or the lymphatic system to sites in the body very, very far away from where they started. And for some people, unfortunately, the first time they know they have cancer is where the secondary zone for the cancer spread is discovered. And then they have to find out where it started from in order to understand how to optimize treatment. In the main, benign tumors do not spread that far or invade nearby tissue. Therefore, the prognosis for benign tumors is much better than that for malignant tumors. This is a map of the world. And all it shows you is that cancer is a universal condition. And if you look at where at least Nigeria is, I know many people from Nigeria and other parts of the world, for male, prostate cancer is saying is one of the biggest killers, or the incidence of prostate cancer in Nigeria is quite high. If you look at, for women, it's more like breasts and cervix are the ones that really might be of issue in sub-Saharan Africa. But essentially, this map tells you the incidence, most common types of cancer are spread across the world. So if you take nothing away from the map, it shows you that all across the world, cancer is a lived reality. And there are various forms that affect various people in various geographical areas.
Dr. Joe, quick one, please.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. We can't see your slide.
Oh, you can't see my slides?
No.
Can you see them now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Do you want us to go back?
Let's see if there are any questions, and if there are, we'll take it from there. So
okay, no problem. Sorry about that. I was mixed up somewhere. Okay. So unfortunately for us, the burden of cancer means 10 million people lose their lives every year. And this is not about the people who lose lives with this particular type of cancer, but the incidence of cancers across the world are highest is breast cancer, followed by lung cancer, followed by colorectal cancers, followed by prostatic cancer, and then skin cancer. And obviously the preponderance of people with breast cancer tend to be women, and I think the preponderance of people with lung cancer tend to be men. So there's something around understanding that not only is cancer a universal condition, it has differential impacts by type in relation to the sexes. Now, what we try to do is to understand that cancer by means of excessive abnormal growth and pressure and spread to other parts of the body brings about injurious effects to the person who suffers from cancer. Mental health defined is about people being able to be in a state of well-being, realizing the abilities they have, coping what you might call the normal stresses of life, working productively and fruitfully, and making a contribution to their community. So we're not defining, remember, there's sort of conflation around difference between mental illness and mental health. We're talking about mental health in its broadest terms. So we take nothing from definitions about well-being. It's about being able to realize your abilities and cope with what you might call the normal stresses of life. So for instance, nobody in their right sense would say a diagnosis of cancer or cancer treatment is a normal stress of life. It's not. And the impact upon your work and your connections in the community are significant. As such, without a doubt, however you look at it, cancer has consequences for one's mental health. Now, some of the major themes to consider when you're thinking about the relationship between cancer and mental health is the fear. The overriding fear that cancer, for many people, indicates a terminal condition. And fear might actually make people who have symptoms scared to go and seek help, or indeed, when they've sought help, not want to get involved with investigations that might reveal the cause of their physical condition. Isolation is also linked to this same concept. When you get diagnosis or when you're going through the investigation processes, people tend to want to clam up and not share for fear of whatever their concern is at a point. And isolation then becomes a big issue for them because they can't take strength from people who have been on the journey before themselves. They may have erroneous notions as to what is possible, and therefore it cements problems with their mental health. Loss of self-esteem in terms of what the impact of the condition is on your sense of self, on your abilities to function on a day-to-day basis, are significant issues that affect the mental health of somebody who's going through a cancer journey. In terms of hard-edged mental illness, as opposed to mental health, and remember, I define mental health by well-being, ability to deal with stresses, ability to optimize your contribution to your society, versus mental illness, where you have a set of signs and symptoms that affect the way you behave, think, and feel, that are significant enough to disrupt your daily functioning. Anxiety and depression are the most prevalent mental health disorders arising from cancer. And you can see why, because clearly fear and isolation will increase your anxiety. And when you have fear, isolation, loss of self-esteem, and loss of independence, clearly your mood will dip, and you can then get frank clinical depression. It's important, and the survivors or people going through treatment among us will know the notion of a cancer journey. It's important to emphasize this because when you relate mental health to cancer, you're talking about very particular subjective experiences as well as what we know in generalities. So it's very difficult to make sweeping generalizations. But the important thing is cancer journey refers to a person's cancer experiences from diagnosis through what I call survivorship or death. So it doesn't stop even when your cancer, in terms of the physical manifestation of it, are beaten, your cancer journey still remains, because clearly the prognostic issues are around how long your cancer free from, whether you have recurrence, and so on and so forth. But the cancer journey helps you to position yourself, if you're a sufferer, in your particular context, without necessarily feeling bad that somebody with a similar diagnostic label seems to be coping with it better than you. That's their journey, not yours. And I think the key thing is to realize that no two journeys are exactly the same. Now, one of the things to take into account is breaking that journey up. And obviously you start your cancer journey when you start feeling the symptoms that get diagnosed ultimately as cancer. So some of the mental health problems start at that initial phase. And it's about intense emotions, which must probably be fear and panic. And sometimes when you've had the diagnosis, it gets to anger. Why me? You start grieving for the loss of what you think could no longer be fulfilled in terms of your dreams. And there's a bit of guilt around where maybe there's a relationship between certain lifestyle choices and the kind of cancer they suffer with. But that's not necessarily a fair estimation of correlation or causality, because many people who do the things you did may not necessarily come down with the cancer diagnosis. And there are many people who, for instance, have never smoked in their lives that get lung cancer. So what this science would suggest is that the emotional responses make the initial phase of dealing with diagnosis very challenging. So the more emotionally aroused, the more emotionally distressed you are, the less likely you can concentrate and take in information that might help you make choices around treatment, for instance. And they've noticed that it's more emotionally distressing the more prolonged the diagnostic phase of your treatment is. So when they're still trying to find out what is wrong, or where there's uncertainty about whether or not you have cancer before it can be confirmed, it does make the emotional distress attached to diagnosis more difficult. And I think they talk about high rates of anxiety at early stages of treatment impacting upon the ability to process information and fully understand the dimensions of the disease as it afflicts them, as well as what their treatment options may be. So it's important, if we're thinking about mental health, that the mental health support for people at the point they get their first diagnosis is important, and just as important as wherever else they are on their patient journey. Unfortunately, if you look at the kind of tabulation, obviously the figures will vary depending on what science literature you look at, but 50% of sufferers across the board do not beat their condition, either because they have recurrences, or unfortunately they have terminal consequences, or they have some associated kind of system response that leads to early mortality. Because of the association we make between mortality and cancer, cancer is one of the most dreaded diagnoses. And as I said before in previous slides, once you get that diagnosis, it's important that there's adequate support to boost your mental health, because the fear of cancer in the main relates to mortality and what people know about the experience of cancer treatment and possibly the impact of the treatment of cancer and cancer itself on your life expectancy, on your life choices, and the ability to function as you used to. Fear of recurrence, particularly where initial treatments have been successful, particularly if the diagnosis is unexpected, and if there are no limited signs and symptoms, that diagnosis is particularly high. And we know that for some samples in kind of surveys that have been done, up to 10% of cancer sufferers will develop clinical levels of depression. And the distinction to make there is depression that requires medicinal or other intervention, not just what you might expect to be normal sadness and low mood associated with cancer or its treatment, but clinical depression. Now, there's a sense of loss that when you think about having a cancer diagnosis, thinking through the symptoms and the impact of symptoms on your daily life, also the range of treatments and the side effects of the treatments, there's a sense that people who are suffering from cancer feel that it's taken over their lives. And everything they then have to do is around managing the condition, and their work life, their family life, their social life, their spiritual life takes a backseat to the cancer. And that sense of loss of control can also bring about panic attacks, or indeed generalized anxiety, or health-related anxiety, or frank depression. There's something around when you have certain cancers that are caught late, or ones that have traditionally poor prognostic outcomes, or ones by dint of their location have life-limiting, so esophageal cancers, for instance. Grief, anxiety, and depression are all reliable kind of responses to fears about what is to come or what might not happen in terms of life plans that you set out prior to the onset of illness. There's also issues about loss of identity and self-esteem related to physical changes like hair loss, libido, issues about friendships that have to get by the wayside because these friends don't know how to relate to you with the enormity of the change to your life that cancer imposes. People who don't know how to talk to you, or people who bring in life views or perspectives that are at odds with what your treating team is telling you. There's also loss of role function, how you see yourself in society in terms of work, family life, as a parent, as a child, as a relative, and the loss of social network, because obviously, as we said before, if treatment takes over most of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, then every other thing has to drop. And that sense of disconnection is a loss that you feel very, very intimately and can impact upon your mental health writ large. These things link: fear, loss, isolation. When you're going through treatment, you take time off work, you're probably traveling to specialist centers, for instance. You can't do lots of work post-treatment. And all of a sudden, somebody who is a highly functional member of a team at work, although it's different side in COVID times, feels left out. Prospects for promotion and enjoying your work-life balance reduce. Relatives and friends are also anxious, also depressed, also worried about how to relate and support you. And sometimes they don't have adequate knowledge about your condition to actually understand the impact of treatment on you as an individual. Finally, in certain contexts, even when services are geared up to provide cancer support, not being aware of what's available at different times in your cancer journey can bring about a burden of despair, distress, anxiety, and depression. What about communication? One of the things that is also important, because remember, all we're trying to do is position the mental health consequences of cancer, both in terms of its diagnosis, its treatment, and the ongoing impact it has on the person's life. So one of the things that we know that has a negative impact on mental health in cancer sufferers is poor communication in the clinical settings about the choices you have, the options you have about treatment, and these negatively impact the well-being of the person with cancer and can compound feelings of loss of control. So it's important that if you have questions at the point of receiving care, that you ask these questions and you don't stop asking until you feel satisfied that the answers you've been given can help you make decisions, can help you understand where you are in your own particular journey. They said that's why they're saying poor communication from clinicians increases the risk of anxiety due to lack of trust and reduces feelings of safety and care among patients. There's something around not only having to deal with the direct consequences of cancer, but also dealing with the consequences of the care delivery support that is inadequate. And that actually makes it more likely that you will have adverse mental health outcomes like depression, anxiety, panic, and distress. What about side effects? I'm sure there are lots of people who can write lots and lots of books around the impact. So even when you're on top of the cancer, when even you're managing to restrict its advances, it's at a great cost to things that people who don't have cancer take for granted. So side effects of cancer treatment include fatigue, nausea, vomiting, insomnia, hair loss, sexual dysfunction, incontinence, weight gain or loss, and the fact surgical removal of certain parts of the body can have profound impact on mental well-being and act as barriers to adaptation and maintaining usual activities. So one can't underestimate that even when the cancer is under control, the consequences of keeping it under control can also have a deleterious impact on mental health. Now, something called chemo brain, which is essentially how does radiotherapy and chemotherapy affect cognitive functioning. And we know that the cancer-related cognitive impairment relates to memory, attention, and cognitive functioning difficulties that causes great distress to people, particularly people in high-powered positions who are used to thinking and being very fleet of foot when it comes to cognitive ability. What about post-treatment? The good thing is the advances in technology and therapeutics means that more and more people have a good chance of controlling the cancer and getting back to some semblance of a functioning life. But what we don't sometimes take into account that is their emotional and mental health requirements in the post-treatment phase of cancer. So many of us who are not close enough to people who suffer from cancer say, oh, thank God she's clear or he's clear, no more issues, and expect that person to suddenly bounce back. But it's been found that for some people, that is when actually the whole weight of what they've been carrying for years or months descends on them. And that pressure from family, friends, relatives to get back to normal has a negative impact on their mental health because they're still trying to process it. There's a delayed psychological adjustment to the fact that they've had something that's been life-threatening, where at various points in their treatment, they felt that maybe death or disability is imminent. And sometimes there's a surprising and unexpected decline in mental well-being after treatment, which then results in additional mental distress. So if you take nothing from what I've said so far, this statement helps to put it in perspective. It says a cancer diagnosis can and will affect the emotional health of patients, families, and caregivers. Common feelings during these life-changing experiences include anxiety, distress, and depression. Roles at home, school, and work can be affected. It is essential to recognize these changes and get help where and when needed. So then what? My argument is that, as we know that cancer is a universal condition, we need to increase the level of awareness about the mental health impact of cancer, which I've said is really about notions of loss, fear, and other facets that can bring about clinical anxiety and clinical depression. And in some cases, we haven't gone there. There's some conditions that actually could result in acute episodes of psychosis. There's a need to support the emotional well-being and mental health. And it's not about psychiatrists necessarily. It's about the whole care delivery system involving families and friends. However, increased awareness will help cancer patients suffer themselves to better understand their own mental health needs, to understand that it's perfectly understandable that your levels of stress, anxiety, and depression will increase and decrease in relation to where you are in your cancer journey, in relation to how well controlled your cancer is, in relation to what part of your body is affected by cancer, and so on and so forth. There needs to be provision of the right support needs at the right time in each person's cancer journey. That's probably the $64 million question, depending on where you live in the world and how accessible those kind of services are. And in some areas, mental health provision is very, very poor, even for generic kind of mental health conditions, talk less of mental health conditions that are secondary to things like cancer. The important thing is people come from individual sociocultural and socioeconomic contexts, and support has to be tailored to their specific requirements. And then issues about access in terms of whether religion, gender, and socioeconomic status impact upon the ability for people to get help, even where help is available. And that refers to things like BMA communities in the Western world, or people who may have a different view of causation in countries where there may be access to services, but they have alternative explanations, kind of spiritual, religious explanations for things like cancer and the healing and all kinds of things. So it's about being very clear that we need to get patient-centered, tailored care at the right time in the right place. We'll end with some reflections from cancer sufferers who've survived their journey so far. I think I chose them because they speak to things I would want to exhort people to think about and take with them if they know people who have cancer or if themselves are cancer survivors. And it says cancer is different for every person. My advice, this is a quote, not me, and get the latest information. Talk to doctors, caregivers, others, talk to friends and others who have had what you have, if at all possible. And there's support groups from survivors. Read articles and educate yourself so that you can be an active participant in your own treatment. Absolutely important. That loss of control or sense of loss of control, sense of loss of independence is a negative factor in the mental health of those who have cancer. And then finally it says, facing cancer forces you to look inward. Ask yourself hard questions about life, death, purpose, and gratitude. enables a new depth and understanding of how to live life from your heart, following your soul's purpose. It might sound all kind of ethereal and existential, but it's true, because actually people who have had to confront their own mortality in a very brutal and abrupt way, of necessity, look inwards to discover what they find there in terms of strength and courage to fight, and I use that word advisedly, a very, very difficult and challenging life experience. So I don't have a lot more to say. Sorry about the beginning. It seems if these things sometimes happen, but the slides there was set to just set out what I mentioned before. Denise flagged up that you couldn't see what I was seeing, but I'm hoping you've seen it from when I showed you the screen. And I hope that the story I tried to tell was clear enough, and I look forward to questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to stop sharing now. Do you want to stop sharing?
Yeah.
So thank you. You may not realize it, but you actually touched what is a fact. Somebody with Annie is really giving you a thumbs up. I think you can see that. From the perspective of cancer, and I'm going to start with me, and then let's take it from there, because there are some questions I have to ask. The first thing that you said, which was very interesting, and I think it came from your second to the last slide, about the comments. You see, fear is really the biggest challenge. Mental health is the, by the way, part of cancer journeys. And unfortunately, society, especially when you look at cultural backgrounds, does not allow you to recognize that cancer does take you on a journey you really don't want to be. So one question I'm going to ask you is, when you look at, okay, let me use from my perspective, because I have gone through a 5-year inactive treatment. And I cannot lie, with the last 12 months, COVID has thrown me down. I think the lockdown, it was easier fighting cancer or going through the challenges of the cancer, and knowing I still had the opportunities to live life this life is like you say, mortality is questioned at this point, yeah? But the minute I went through COVID last year and I got into this year, I couldn't take it anymore. I'm not going to lie. And I ended up, when I realized that it had gone to the last bus stop, I sought the counseling. But I knew, and I had to come to terms with that. And that was something that really stuck out for me, which is why this topic was no longer a just cancer and the mental health. It was actually understanding that a lot of the time people tell us, do this, do that, do this. Religion will tell you, do this, do this, do that. The doctors tell you, do this, do this, do that. You understand what I mean? And you've got to find yourself and work out how you're going to go through the process. And when you know you've hit the brick wall, you have to reach out. So from my perspective, I'm going to ask you a question. Looking at where we are now, and based on what you said, can you give us like a tip of, you've told us about the anxieties, the fears, can you give us like, is there a word or something, is there something that's supposed to be able to help us trigger very quickly that, look, stop, you're breaking down now? I knew when I didn't get it, and I got it when I got to the 5-year. When I was about to hit 5 years, all I could remember was, when you get to 5 years, you either cross the line or you don't cross the line. And I started to see myself, was I going to cross to get past 5 years? I am in active treatment. I don't know if I can get it. I don't know how far I can. And then I would say, well, Denise, you have a purpose. You are still running Come With Cancer. You are trying to get through, and I was battling till I knew, no, I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. It's very humbling to hear stories like you're sharing. I think you have already given me the answer. The answer is in self-knowledge. The answer is in understanding. Denise, prior to cancer, would have had a strong sense of what makes me shake? What are my parameters? What am I strong at? And immediately you came to that self-knowledge that, look, this isolation is causing me difficulty. My 5-year mark, I'm not feeling myself. I'm not coping. My thoughts are getting too, and it's having the courage to do something about what you come up with. Every sufferer, everybody with mental illness, writ large, or mental health issues, arrives at that same conclusion. The challenge is some people don't then do anything about it urgently enough before the problem overwhelms them. So it's about saying, am I feeling lonely? Okay, am I feeling lonely in spite of people there in my care system being available to me? So it's something intrinsic to the way I'm thinking about myself. Is my anxiety unmanageable over and above the anxieties that are legitimate around treatment? Am I feeling isolated in terms of not being able to participate in? If the answer to that is yes, 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 and I'm losing sleep, I'm not eating as well as I can, apart from the consequence of treatment, then you need to go and get help. The question is whether people feel stigmatized in saying, not only do I have something that people are scared about or scared of, I'm now adding a layer of mental health problems. Am I sure I really want to go and start doing that? And that to me is the issue. It's about getting rid of the stigma, getting rid of the anxiety. Actually, you deserve to treat your mental health consequences of cancer with as much aggressiveness as a cancer is treated by the oncologist. So thank you for that. It's about self-knowledge and people around you who know you better than maybe a child, maybe a partner, maybe a husband, say, well, they also have a role in saying you're not yourself, allowing for the fact that cancer has an impact on your life. Let's do something about it. What can we do? Who should we meet? How can we start talking about what you need? And each person will have a slightly different answer to that question, but it's about that self-knowledge and recognizing when to call for help.
Thank you. There's someone in the house I would like a comment from, if it's possible. Dr. Adamu, he's the president of the National Cancer Society. And I know he's on. I don't know if he can talk at this point because he's very busy, but honestly, he's helping all of us. I know he will hear at some point. When he can, I want him to say something because of the challenges in Nigeria. And I look at the developing countries and the challenges they are facing. And I know that things are now changing. There's some funding has gone out, and I wanted to see what the view is from that perspective. So I've left it. I know he'll come back on it. He's in the house, so he will say something at some point. Okay, then there's another, and if you have any questions, please put up your hand and then I'll take it from there. But while I'm going on, I've got some written questions. A question has come through saying that if you go through the experience of cancer, people that go through the experience, I'm trying to scan it. People that go through the experience of cancer go through the experience of cancer without an understanding of the mental health, because if you say you have mental health in developing countries, Africa to be precise, it means that you have lost something. So people don't want to talk about that.
I think I'm trying to make a distinction between frank mental illness and mental health problems. I think it would be remiss of us to deny the fact that in the everyday life in Nigeria, where things are challenging for many people, mental health problems exist, where you're worried about it. They're couched in different language. You might be worried about where my rent's going to come from, worried about when I'm going to get promotion, worried about whether I'm going to be able to pay down payments on the house that they're building somewhere. So worry, anxiety, loss of sleep are everyday realities. The question is, if you say, well, I'm worried about what I've got, I'm worried about the consequences it might have on me in terms of longevity as a mother or father, that's a legitimate entry point saying, where do I get help from? So it's to tease apart the fact that mental illness exists and people who have mental illness can then get cancer, irrespective of the fact that their mental illness predates cancer. But when you do have cancer, your sense of fear, as we said, Denise, your anxiety, loss, they flare up. So it's about people recognizing that's the reality of the situation and finding help. And I think the interesting thing is maybe more people are more likely to go to church or go to the mosque or go somewhere. But I'm sure people in Nigeria are sophisticated enough to say, actually, some people need help. They might not think it's a problem for a psychiatrist or psychologist, but they definitely recognize there's a problem. And they'll be praying for you alongside whatever treatment you're getting. And I guess it's about survivors helping to user empowerment. Actually, when I had my diagnosis, it was very lonely, it was very scary, it was very worrying. And this is what I did about it, and sharing those personal narratives. And that's what gets people feeling, if somebody somewhere has gone through that journey before, and he or she has something meaningful to say to my life, and I'll follow it. And increasingly what you're finding is churches are actually investing in health missions where they're bringing experts in. So I think that rapprochement between kind of spiritual ways of dealing with issues and medical are getting closer intertwined. And it's about people having the courage to come out and say, first of all, I have cancer, I'm surviving it, and I want to talk about it. That will make a change.
You know why I laugh now? Yeah. Because it's the C word. It's the C word.
Yeah. But like in everything, I think I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example. I have mental health problems in my family. And I think the problem with stigma is once you own the stigma, then big deal. Does that make any less? So if you say, if you go to the middle of a church and say, I have cancer, people are going to run away from you. Some might because they're ignorant. But once you own it, that's the end of it. It becomes a fact, and people have to live with that reality. And I think too often, well, forget about cancer, because cancer is a big ticket issue. But as psychiatrists on the conversation will know, there are some psychiatric conditions that we deal with that are life-threatening too. And I think there comes a time where we keep saying, well, if we have first-class expectations in terms of first-world expectations in terms of goods of luxury, nobody says, well, a Rolls Royce is too good a car for Nigerian roads. So why is it that what will help us be the best, most optimized version of ourselves mentally is something we can't talk about? Why is it that people are suffering in silence? Something that is really, really important. So for me, forgive me for having a kind of attitude that says, yes, that may be the status quo, but status quo doesn't change until people say, actually, I'm making a stand. And I look at what you're doing, it's fantastic. You're making a stand. And therefore, people who come onto this program or listen to it by Facebook, pick up something and say, hold on, let's review this again. Cancer is so common. My mother's younger sister died of choriocarcinoma. She'd had a mole many, many years before that. And unfortunately, when it came back second time, it was too late. Within 8 months, she died in Nigeria. I got another friend. They're both doctors. The GP, she was brushing her teeth in the morning. Copious amounts of blood came out. She knew it wasn't normal. Within 8 months, she died. She had acute leukemia of some sort, and so on and so forth. You can always, there are people. I've got another friend, a doctor in New York. He had tongue cancer. So we can't get away from it. It's there. So we should stop assuming this is not a stigma. It's a big life-challenging condition. And the last thing people suffering from it need is additional layer of stigma. No, we should get rid of that. People have to start standing firm and saying, look at prostate cancer. Most of us Black men over 50 some increased risk of prostate cancer. And we have to get used to the fact that some people have prostate cancer. My grandfather had prostate cancer, but luckily that's not what killed him. So what I'm trying to say passionately is cancer is ubiquitous now. It's no longer a kind of fringe issue. It's a mainstream issue, and we have to talk about it and reduce stigma.
Thank you. Anybody in the house want to say something without writing a comment? You can say, you put up your hand.
Yeah.
Dr. Adamu is in. Yeah. Dr. Amaru, thank you.
I'm here, man. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Adamu Al-Hassan Umar. I'm the president of the Nigerian Cancer Society. Let me quickly say 2 or 3 things. Firstly, I want to sincerely appreciate and recognize the effort by Dr. Dennis Ejo and the team at COMOD Cancer Foundation for this sustained, legacy of having this regular Let's Talk About It sessions. It's actually quite impressive, and I must admit, I always look forward to it. I missed the last one, and I felt bad because anytime I hook onto the program, I make sure I get a lot of insight into the current issues at hand. So I congratulate you, Ma, on this milestone. And I hope and pray that God will continue to give you the wisdom and the energy to sustain this initiative. Secondly, I must sincerely appreciate the smooth talking Dr. Tim Ojo for the wonderful presentation, even though I joined about 10 or 11 minutes late, but I was glued to my computer screen, watching him talk. And listening to him alone will give one, the desired, assurance that all is going to be well. I must appreciate you, sir, for the amount of stuff you dished out over the past 1 hour. And I hope to listen to it again from the recorded version of this program. Dr. Dennis, I think we need to have this discussion again and again, because this should be a recurring decimal in our routine, let's talk about it, sessions. The presentation by Dr. Tim Ojo is so fantastic that we need to hear it again and again, over and over again. And I want to also use this opportunity to ask you to please link me up with Dr. Tim Ojo, because we need to expand this. We need to, break barriers. The Nigerian Cancer Society has a 1-year plan of action, a work plan sort of. And part of that work plan is a quarterly, NCS lecture series, similar to what we are having here today. And I hope and pray that we need somebody like this man that can talk in such a way that everybody will understand. He talks in slangs, but the good thing about it is that he talks in slangs, but his American accent is comprehensible to everybody, including my humble self, from a remote village in Yobe State. So we need to hear this man again and again. So please, I want you to link me up with this man so that we can expand the horizon of this discussion. And I must salute those that were listening, who are part of this program, and those that are watching on Facebook. And I hope and pray that we'll continue to expand, because mental health is a major issue. It's the in thing. Everything we do, everything, including those of us in the advocacy space, needs some form of deep knowledge about mental health to be able to appropriately engage the victims and our survivors, of cancer, talk less of the patients, talk less of the victims themselves. So I must appreciate you sincerely, and I'm happy and glad that I got the time to, hook on to listen to this program today. And I call on you to please, let's have a repeat of this, and let's try and make it, publicize it very well, so that many, many more will join to listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Umar Nabode.
Wow. So you see, the man,
Dr. Ojo.
The man is universal. Wonderful. Nagode, sir.
So, Dr. Tim, I will talk to you later and you'll tell me what to do next, yeah?
No problem.
But honestly, this thing is really big for us. Dr. Adamu is one of our serious campaign. He encourages us to keep going. And that's why, because I know that he is now running after funding that has now been approved and treatment is now going through for those in Nigeria. So there's someone on the web on here that needs help. I will contact, I've sent you a message, so you send me a message later so that we can, the person on the group, send me a message later. I've sent you my contact, get in touch with me so that we can see what we can do for you in Nigeria. Yeah, but there is help now. And that is, honestly, I've really enjoyed this time. So anybody else with any question, anybody has a comment, anybody has something you want Dr. Tim to talk about before I start to round up? Any comments? No, so I can round up. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to round up with one more thing. I've got a few people saying thank you for this event and thank you for your conversation. And somebody has shared here that They found it very, very difficult dealing with cancer and their mental health. But I will speak to the person and get back to you. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. As far as I think I've almost finished. Dr. Gbenga is also a psychiatrist. Is that psychiatrist? Please, you people shouldn't be upset with me. I don't understand terms. I can't pronounce those words. Psychiatrist, my friend, I call her mental doctor. She's on here. That's all I call her. Dr. Gbenga, have you got any comment quickly for Dr. Ojo before I shut down? Thank you. Dr. Gbenga is one of our advisory board.
Yeah, definitely. I listened from the start to the end. As usual, I'm on my walk, so that's why my camera is off. But it was definitely a great presentation because I can relate because I'm in consultation liaison psychiatry, which they call medicine, psychiatry. So I see medical patients with psychiatric manifestations. And I work with a lot of cancer centers in Philadelphia and in Tampa area in Florida. So very great presentation. Thank you very much, Dr. Ojo. I really enjoyed it. You were very clear, concise, everything. So great one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Doc. You say I call you Prof. I've just been told it's Prof. Oh, you see now, my friend didn't give me the correct. He said I should say Prof. Dr. Ojo, that's what my friend said I should call.
Don't mind Prof is my uncle. Don't mind doing. This is my big sister. She has been bullying me since you were young.
You just sent me a message now. You said say Prof. I said okay. Let me say Prof. Let me look for trouble.
God will promote me, but I'm just
Amen.
Doctor. I manage my doctor. I'm not worried. Prof for other people, not me.
Okay, so I want to say very, very big thank you. I don't think there are any more comments here coming up. For all those who want to share it and watch it, it will go on the YouTube channel later today or this week anyway, somehow. I will let you know. On behalf of Commode Cancer Foundation, I'd like to thank you very, very much, Dr. Ojo, for this time. I honestly will not lie. When I try to talk about it from the mental health, I sometimes feel maybe I'm just being a bit excessive. But like I try to encourage people as well, you've got to fight. Let's fight together and hopefully we'll win. Some of us may not, but at least if we keep fighting, we can hold each other's hands and drag each other on this journey because all of us are going through it in one way or the other. Cancer is here and we've got to fight to survive it. And we've got to fight to show people that no matter what it is, we can make it as far as we're supposed to get to. Make it a useful journey, make this experience not be wasted in self-pity, but rather in helping others who are going through it. There are quite a few people that are cancer survivors here that I have met. Most of the people on this platform I have never met in my life, and you are all awesome. I cannot lie. It's quite encouraging from the Commode Cancer team. I think we've just done just over a year doing this every month, and it's making a difference, and that's all that matters. So on behalf of Commode Cancer Foundation, I'd like to direct you all. We've got our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and our website where you can get information and you can send messages to us and we will try and get back to you. We are also trying seriously, and Dr. Adamu is helping us to try and raise some funds to get billboards across Nigeria through grants, not through begging of, no, we don't ask for money, through grants to put billboards signposted across Nigeria in every state so that people know where to go to get help. So if you know anybody that is of any interest or will support that project, it's a project specific, it is not we're not looking for money. We're looking for a project specific grant to be able to achieve that. And we're going on it. We've gone quite far. So Dr. Adamu, thank you. I will send you back the final documentation for that when I finish. Dr. Ojo, thank you. Everybody in the house, thank you all for coming and joining us today. It was really nice, and we look forward to speaking to you guys again in a month's time. I'll send out that next month is Breast Cancer Month. So Breast Cancer Month, a lot is going on. Take care. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Bye. Bye.